Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast from Born Without Boundaries Tarot here on Astrology Motivation. What I'm going to do is cover the major transits and aspects of planetary movement so that you can understand how they may impact us and your day to day. We have some major events this week. One is a full moon, which is extremely intense, and we'll get into why. The other is the transit of Venus from Capricorn into Aquarius, which changes a lot of things. It changes a lot of, it changes mentality. There's also some beautiful aspects associated with that transit. We have a Pluto-Venus conjunction as Venus transits into Aquarius. So there could be some extremes, one way or the other, extremes that could push us one way or the other, but they are harmonious. There's a lot of harmony around Venus, and we'll get into that. The full moon is going to be an extremely emotional one, which is going to make it particularly challenging. We're going to get into that. And Chiron is extremely active right now, and I'll tell you what that means. So I hope everybody's doing really well. Welcome. This is a weekly astrology forecast for the first week of 2023, so it runs from between Sunday the 1st through Saturday the 7th, and I thought it was really perfect that we begin our year on a Sunday. We start our calendar at the first day of the week. So it's almost too perfect, especially Capricorn season. It likes its order. It likes to do things fundamentally structured and in the correct way. So starting our year at the beginning of a week, I thought was almost perfect. But there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to get through this week, and the full moon is going to make it particularly emotional. We begin this week still with the sun square to Chiron and trine to Uranus. The fact that there's so much activity between major inner planets like the sun and the moon and Venus interacting with Chiron means that we're working through a lot of pain. It means we're working through a lot of suffering, or we could be learning through pain and suffering. So this could mean that there's increased potential for injury, or that you're working through injuries, or you're working through hardships in order to really finally be able to learn the lessons, because a square means that you have struggled in order to get wiser. So there is a lot of teaching or aha moments that are going to come through us having to be very uncomfortable or suffer or actually be injured. So in particular, I would say Leo's in the beginning of the week, or actually through most of the week, Cancerians, and maybe Libra, Taurus. Toward the end of the week, we even have a square between Chiron and Mercury. So toward the end of the week, it could be Gemini and Virgo. Watch for injury, watch for sickness, watch for just an increased likelihood of those things, but especially watch for what they're trying to teach you and what they're triggering, so that you make those changes. So the sun trine to Uranus square Chiron. Let me tell you, this has been going on for a while now, and I think that what the universe is trying to do with this energy is try to push us toward change by making us uncomfortable or reminding us of suffering. It's trying to teach us that, you know what, something just doesn't work anymore. Something doesn't feel good. It's not right. It's dysfunctioning, and it's doing so to make us comfortable with finally making some changes, making us realize that we have to make those changes, because if we don't, the suffering is going to continue. But that trine between Uranus and the sun is giving us options, right? It's giving us a way to feel comfortable with like finally being able to be different or do something differently, realizing that maybe the way that we've been doing things or our life purpose now doesn't seem as comfortable as it used to seem. Like it just doesn't feel as good. And that maybe we're okay with changing now, especially with that inspiration from Chiron. The sun is in Capricorn. Chiron is in Aries. So a lot of this could be with work injury or injury from work, or the way that maybe work is really grinding us, making us sick, making us not feel good, or if we've actually been injured on the job, the recognition of that, what that's teaching us or what that had taught us, and maybe helping us lead to a change in what we do. Could be a change in career or a change in how we do things, realizing, especially if we're getting really worn down or we're really really like physically impacted. Chiron in Aries is a very physical suffering, because Aries is a very physical sign. And Chiron is that sort of physical. A Chiron being in Aries, it's just a lot of physicality, but physical injury. Now that could be past physical injury, trying to teach us that we have to change and we have to do things. And I think we're going to get a big reminder of that this week. On Tuesday, okay, it's not all bad, I promise. On Tuesday, Venus heads into Aquarius, but all week, happy birthday, Doug Denny, all week, Venus is sextile to Jupiter. So for Tauruses and Libras, this is really lovely energy for all of us, but especially Taurus and Libra, that's your ruling dignitary. There's just an expansive growth potential for you right now. And for the rest of us, there is a sense of a heart opening, a romanticism around us, being able to even have some financial opportunities that start to open for us, or at least our mindset with regards to what we could do, what our possibilities are. As Venus transits from Capricorn into Aquarius, we start to shift our focus from pragmatism, practicality, loving our work, loving what we do, making connections with regards to our career, and we focus it more on our community, helping others, and friendships. So romance that starts around this time, and later in the week, Venus is going to trine Mars in Gemini. So yeah, we could be really prime, like set, sort of primed to take action or speak or talk, or somebody that we're talking to, especially a friend, could easily develop into a romantic interest. But romance, with when Venus moves into Aquarius, usually starts with friendship, or we're just loving on our friends and we're very close to our friends. We're helping our friends, or we're getting a lot of love from friends. So this could be a really good time to celebrate that energy. Yeah, but that sextile to that Venus sextile Jupiter is gonna be around all week, and it's really lovely energy. We could get a lot of help from our friends. It could be friends that make us like set up conversations that help us move forward. I think Venus in Aquarius is also a lot more inclined to finance, like helping other people financially, getting help. So getting help or giving help or getting support from your friends. So it could be through this network that we find a lot more opportunities now. And since Venus is so nicely positioned with that trine to Mars later on in the week, as well as that sextile to Jupiter all week, we are productive. We can get things done, or we can, we can set ourselves up for potential for growth and expansion, especially when it comes to what we consider ourselves able to do, or how we consider ourselves able to help others, or maybe what we are doing to help others, or allow ourselves to get help by others. So that's actually really supportive energy. But the moon is doing some weird things. And the beginning of, not weird things, it's making a lot of, it's forming a lot of squares and oppositions right now, since the moon is heading into the quadrant of the zodiac wheel where most planets aren't. It's running into a lot of squares and oppositions with where all the other planets are. The full moon is a pretty powerful moon because it is, once again, it's not just opposite the sun, it's opposite the sun conjunct Mercury, and it is directly square to Chiron. So this is a particularly painful and emotional moon. I think if you're a Cancerians, particularly Cancerians who are born toward the middle of the Cancer season, I would say that you should watch out for injury, particularly around this time, especially injury about what people think about you, what they think about your ego, or being too egotistical, because the moon is opposite the sun conjunct Mercury, and that could be a very confident energy, especially with how you talk and the ideas that you have, but there could be a lot of criticism that comes from that. There could also be sort of some injury that you get from thinking too quickly, or thinking that you know something too quickly, and overconfidence. So be particularly careful around that full moon, especially if that's your zodiac sign and that's around your birth date. Yeah, I would say particularly even just from like July 10th on to toward the end of Cancer, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. So be particularly aware of that energy. It's just going to be kind of an emotional moon for us all, though, because full moons impact us all. And what really concerns me isn't even so much the opposition to Mercury conjunct the sun. It's that it's square to Chiron. So Chiron is bringing up a lot of past injuries, past sufferings, past hurts. And what have we learned from it? What's the wisdom that we've gained from it? So we could actually channel that energy to, if we're open to allowing ourselves to be taught and we're open-minded, we could be discussing or creating solutions to those injuries, or solutions to those pains, or the things sort of that we have kind of discovered in the beginning of the week that weren't working and that weren't functioning. It all kind of comes to a head at that full moon. So that would be where we are focused on what we have to release, what we have to give up, what we have to change. The sun conjunct Mercury is still in Capricorn, so a lot of this has to do with our career and what we've built out into the world. So if you find yourself really getting to a point where you're like, okay, now I know I need a change. I know I've got to let this go. I'm not going to deal with this anymore, or I'm making myself sick, or I'm putting myself at risk of injury. This is the time when you're just going to be done, when you're going to be ready to relinquish it, when you're going to be ready to let it go, and you can cast your energy out into the universe. Please, God, I'm making space for new solutions and new career possibilities. It doesn't mean that you're changing your career completely. It could even mean that you're shifting between your career. It's like your home life work balance. If that has been out of balance a lot since the full moon is in Cancer, if there has been a great imbalance when it comes to that, this is where enough is enough. You'll be tired of it. You'll be sick. You may even be injured, which will help sort of wake you up to the fact that you have to change, and that maybe things haven't been balanced, and you have to get them back into balance. So this could be a great full moon to release any overly ambitious ideas, or any imbalance that has to do with, causing tension between your home life and your work life, and seeing how you can regulate those a little bit better. We do have some conjunctions with Pluto. This is really interesting. So full moon in Cancer in opposition to square Uranus. The day later, what happens is the moon will then be in opposition to Pluto because it'll be in later Cancer. So the day after the full moon, which I think is Saturday, Cancer is going to be then in opposition to Pluto. And I'm sorry, not Cancer, but the moon is going to be in opposition to Pluto, which is always a very emotional time. So if the full moon doesn't convince us to change, that run-in with between our emotions and Pluto will force a change. And remember, Pluto is in Capricorn as well, so there could be a change that's absolutely forced on us because, like, definitely enough is enough, and we end up on next Sunday, which is actually the beginning of the next week. There's the moon goes into Leo and it forms a grand square. So that's opposition to Pluto. There's also there, and so then the moon becomes square, and it's happening especially within the I'm sorry, I'm just not thinking right. This, guys, you could tell that I'm sick. There's a grand square in all the fixed signs. So fixed signs, especially at the very end or beginning of next week, end of this week, beginning of next week, it's almost like feeling like you're stuck. The feeling of being stuck, of I want to make these changes and I don't like what's going on, but I can't figure out what to do about it. But it'll be predominantly emotional, and that will pass. But I think there's just a lot of sort of coming to Jesus moments this week about the changes that we have to make with regards to our own health, our own happiness, our own well-being, and the well-being of our careers and how we make money and the expectations we put on ourselves with regards to all of those functional things. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that this week is, for Taurus and Libras, going to feel, happy birthday, Doug Denny, pretty good. But for Cancerians especially, it's going to be a very emotional week. Leo, you're going to be liberated, especially by the end of the week, because the sun has been square to Chiron for quite some time now, and that will end. And that will feel really good because you won't feel so much of a drain on your energy. You won't feel so challenged physically if you've been going through physical challenges. You won't be bumping and bruising yourself a lot, especially with regards to your career, because the sun is in Capricorn right now. So a sense of kind of feeling almost neutered in a way when it comes to your career, or ineffective or not listened to, all of those challenges, maybe people throwing things up to your face a lot. All of those challenges will start to subside now. And so that will create a big relief for you, actually, because I think the trine to Uranus is still there. So it's a sense of, okay, now I can make movements, and now I'm certain of the changes that I have to make, which is really liberating, because half the problem to every solution is figuring out the problem to begin with and realizing what you have to change. And there's a big relief once you realize what's got to go, right? Or when you know what you're dealing with, now at least you can deal with it, right? So there's a little bit of a relief toward the end of the week and beginning of next week. I think next week is going to be a little more gentle. This week is going to be particularly emotional. So watch out for those specific dates, and especially for specific zodiac signs. Watch out for that. Watch out for those specific days. And that full moon with Cancerians especially is going to be pretty intense because it is home. The moon is home in Cancer. And it's quite moody and quite emotional. So there could be a lot of family drama that's going on too, especially with that opposition to everything that's happening to the sun conjunct Mercury in Capricorn. So there could be a lot of family discussions and difficulties that are worked out, but I think it's going to be more personal. I think it's going to be more about finding that work-life balance, and Chiron is there to square this full moon, so it's going to be teaching us about, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer, you're going to injure yourself, or you're going to keep making yourself sick if you don't create a better balance. So that's at least functional, and we can all be, if we can all focus our minds on the functionality and try not to take things too personal, which is going to be difficult because the moon is extremely emotional right now this week. But it's through our emotions that I think that it's gonna really be exacerbated, the changes that we need to make. Let me know in the comments below how all of this intense energy is impacting you this week, because I want to know. And please do look for me over on Born Without Boundaries Tarot for all the weekly zodiac specific messages. I love you guys. And if you subscribe to this channel, you can join me for our live chats every single weekday, where I do a general tarot card reading and a general daily astrology overview, and we can just have a nice chit chat. Hopefully I will see you there, and I'll see you in the videos over on Born Without Boundaries Tarot. Love you guys.